Hello everyone, and welcome to the second part of my ZOHD Nano Talon review. Today is the build part of it, and I'm going to install a simple receiver and a transmitter. I'm not going to go with flight controller setup. This is going to be the first simple setup. The advanced setup will come later because I want to fly this as soon as possible. So this should do it for now, and I'm going to show you how simple it is to set up, and I'm going to show you some of the good things about this gyro and how much it will help you set up this plane. So without continuing with nonsense, I'm going to jump into action. So I'm going to use this transmitter. It's labeled as an Idea Fly. It's actually a Fly Sky transmitter. This is very cheap, and it has been factory modded to 10 channels. A problem with this type of transmitters and receivers is the fact that most of them do not have a fail-safe. This receiver does have a fail-safe, and I'm going to show you how to activate it. It's rather strange, but it has a trick and it will work. So this receiver does support PPM, and this gyro supports PPM as well, but to set up PPM on this type of receiver, you actually need to enable that from the menu, and I'm going to enter the menu. I have selected blank profile. It's nothing program on it, and if you go to the menu here in RX setup, you should have an option. If you are running a FlySky firmware, you should have an option here to set up the receiver to PPM or PWM. This, because it's modded by IdeaFly, doesn't have that option, and I have to settle for what this supports by default, and that is PWM. So that's going to work in my case. So I'm going to shut down the transmitter for now. To connect this in PWM connection, I'm going to start with the main wire here, and it's following the regular order, so you can even see them here. So it's aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder, and mode switch. So this is sometimes abbreviated with only the first letter, so it's AEDR, the order of the wiring. So I'm going to start with channel 1, which should be my aileron. Then the next wire should go here, and it should be my elevator. Then I'm going to select the next wire, which should be my throttle on the third channel. Then I'm going to use the rudder wire, and last but not least, the mode switch. This should change how the gyro works, and you can put it into 6-axis or 3-axis stabilization, and you can change that from remote, so you will have a lot of assistance on 6-axis, and on 3-axis it will let you do some acrobatics. Of course, you can disable this later, but for the first flight I'm going to use the 6-axis stabilization for the maximum stability and ease of flight. First you have to bind the receiver, so you have to connect this loop wire on here where it says B VCC, so it's bind or voltage. So I'm going to plug this loop here, and on the transmitter I'm going to hold the bind button, and I'm going to power it on. It's in binding menu, and now I'm going to power on the ESC, and this LED is now steady, which means that the receiver is now connected, and you can see I have telemetry from the receiver with no errors, and transmitter and receiver voltage is displayed here, and I already have throttle working, so that's fine. To be sure to complete the binding, you need to power off by removing the battery, and I'm going to remove this loop here, and I'm going to cycle the power on the transmitter, and now I'm going to power it back on. And if I connect the battery, I have a working transmitter and receiver. So let's check. So this should be elevator, and it seems to work. This is ailerons and they work. Rotor, yes, of course, and rudder. Now, what is very nice about this plane and the included gyro, this thing does a procedure which is called V-tail mixing, because this plane doesn't have a regular rudder and an regular elevator. It actually has two rudder elevators, so it only has a control surface on each of the small winglets, and it doesn't have separated controls for them, so it mixes movement with two servos for controlling the tail as a rudder and also as an elevator. And this thing combines the movement of rudder and elevator such that the plane can take a turn by using the rudder and can also go up and down by using the elevator. So it mixes these two control surfaces and does the same thing that a plane does with two different control surfaces. It's a bit hard to explain, but actually it's very simple. The thing is, if you don't use a V-tail mixer like this, you have to program all the stuff from a transmitter. Some transmitters do not support that, some transmitters do support, but it's rather complicated because you need to do mixes, you need to set progressive stuff. So let's say at 50% elevator up or down, you need to apply rather 25% or 60% and so on, and then you need to go outside and test it. Then you will find that you do not have enough rudder control or do not have enough elevator, or when you use both, something is not working as it should. So it's getting very complicated to set that up. Well, with this tiny board here which does the stabilization, you also get the mixing feature, and it also has some other interesting stuff. For example, when you throttle up, it will also move the tails, so it compensates the engine thrust, which will push the nose of the plane down. It will move the elevator to apply up movement a bit, so it will compensate that. So it's very smart, and of course it applies its stabilization algorithm to keep the plane level. Now I'm going to show you a very neat trick if you are using this type of receiver, how to activate failsafe, because these do not have failsafe by default, and most of FlySky receivers do not have any kind of failsafe. So failsafe is very important, because let's say you are cruising around and you lose signal, and the plane will continue doing what was doing last time. So if you have power apply and you lose signal, nothing is going to stop it. It will just fly away, and it will fly away until the battery ends or crashes somewhere, and you will never get it back. So what can you do? You need failsafe, and you can go into the menu, and you have an option here which is named failsafe, and it has this listed. So it's a channel list, and let's say I will go to throttle, which is channel 3, and I'm going to set it on. I'm going to set a level which I want for this channel, so it will be 0 in my case. I want to cut the motor if I lose the signal, and then with the cancel button I'm going to keep it pressed, and I got that confirmation beep which shows me here minus 98%, and then I'm going to keep cancel pressed again, and I had that confirmation beep. And now I'm going to show you something very interesting. I have throttle applied and I killed the transmitter, and the receiver has entered failsafe. So actually this model of receiver can have programmable failsafe for each channel. You program them from the transmitter will send the failsafe code into the receiver, and that gets there, and each time when this will lose signal, it will apply the predefined values that you have set on your transmitter. So this is very nice because you can kill the engine, and because this has stabilization, you can also, let's say, apply some rudder to it, and when you will get out of signal, the plane will just spiral around and lose altitude and fall somewhere, and you have better chances of getting back to it. Another important thing to do before you go out flying is to calibrate the throttle, because the throttle is sent through this gyro board as well, and you have the ESC. So it's very important to have the maximum and minimum range of the throttle programmed, and that is very simple to do. You just need to power on the transmitter with the plane turned off, and I'm going to select maximum throttle, so the throttle stick is at maximum. Now I'm going to connect the battery power, and after the 2 beeps I'm going to put the throttle to 0, and after those 2 beeps it's confirmed that now the throttle range has been fully programmed, and the plane knows how to act when I accelerate or decelerate, and it will send correct commands to the ESC, and I have full range of the motor RPM, which is now correlated with my throttle stick here from the transmitter. And as simple as that, now the plane is actually ready to fly. So you just need to put the canopy back and the wings, and it's in flyable condition. You don't have to set up anything anymore. You don't have to do any more trimmings or things like that from the transmitter. Also, there is a big warning that you should never trim the commands while the plane is in flight. I think it has something to do with the gyro. Probably you can mess it up. One thing to test is the gyro working mode, and I don't actually get proper working mode, so I'm going to try to change the channel. I'm going to use the channel 6 here, and now it's blue, which is mean it's in 6 axis, and this switch now will change the color from red to blue, which means red is for let's say acro mode, and blue is for fully stabilized. You can now also see how all the servos are working to stabilize the plane, and you can now see when I accelerate, the plane will correct the elevator angle, and you can see also the mixing here. So this is the rudder and this is the elevator, and if I combine them, you can see that it does a very nice job in controlling them. So that was it. As you can see, it was very easy, and now the plane is in a fully flyable condition. You only need to find the center of gravity after you assemble all the things together. You just need to play with the battery a bit to find the place where using the marked points on the wings you will get perfect balance, because that's very important for a plane to fly properly. And that's it. Maybe you can add your own FPV if you want to. There's plenty of options. You can add an internal camera here, or you can use the top hatch with the special mount, add a bigger external camera. I haven't decided on the camera yet, but I may go with a larger outside camera and probably an internal video transmitter, because it's more protected inside and I can balance the plane properly. I may go with heading the video transmitter somewhere here. I'm going to try to place the receiver antennas as far as possible from the transmitter. They are on different frequencies, but from my experience, even on different frequencies, if they are too close, they can influence each other and you will probably lose range or have transmitter errors or things like that. So it's better to be safe than sorry. So placing the antenna somewhere further from the transmitter antenna is a good idea. So that was it. It's time to prepare it for the flight now, and the flight test will hopefully come soon. Until then, bye bye.